Leap of Faith podcast fans. Welcome to this week's episode with yours truly, Randy Silver. This is Thursday, January 7th. My birthday is actually on Saturday, so happy early birthday to me. Not that any of you guys care, but just putting it out there in the world, some good vibes. Before we get into this week's before we get into this week's guest, I just want to make a quick note. Yesterday in America, January 6th, there was a lot of, I might even call it protests in DC. There were riots, people breaking into the building. It's not okay. Personally, I was embarrassed to be an American yesterday. I had all my friends worldwide reaching out to me, asking about what happened, why is it happening, things like that. And it was a sad day in America. Now, there's a lot of memes, stuff going on the internet, making fun of it. Fair enough. Whatever. That's the internet. The one thing that was not okay for me that I saw that I just want to talk about is somebody was holding the Confederate flag inside the U.S. Capitol. And even during the Civil War, any time in the world that we've been a U.S. nation, this Confederate flag has never made it to the D.C. and made it into the Capitol. And this is a sad day that we all should honestly take a moment to think about, because what does the Confederate flag stand for? People nowadays who use it still say Southern pride, Southern heritage, but the flag was about rebelling against America and holding slavery as something to use as economic gain, and also putting down and disenfranchising African people who were in America as slaves. The fact that that flag got into the U.S. Capitol building yesterday, no matter what you think and how you view politically, that is such a negative thing that can happen to us as Americans to allow it to ever get to that point. So it was really tough. I actually had to cancel all my meetings yesterday in the afternoon because I was physically and mentally distraught, and I had to take a personal half day because I just was not in the right state to think. Now, this is actually a good segue, is my guest this week, Julia Wuench. She is a career confidence coach, and she actually is my coach that I had in 2020 for Cisco that they provided me and helped me deal with issues with work, mental, life issues, things like that. And she's really done a good job of building out her authenticity guide and how she can help with career coaching for C-level executives, salespeople, people in all realm. She's been in Business Insider, she's been in Forbes, so she's a really knowledgeable person. So this is actually probably the perfect guest to have today to talk about how you can deal with stress, how you can move yourself in your career, how you can get yourself to the next level, but also, just making sure you're mentally safe. So I'm actually happy that Julia is on, because this is the perfect person I need for myself to segue in. Let me bring in Julia. Julia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Randy, for having me. I'm honored to be here and so proud of this podcast that you've built. And I really appreciate how you started off the conversation today. I'm starting a podcast with a condemnation of white supremacy is always a great way to start an episode, but particularly in light of yesterday and how awful and troubling it was, and particularly the sort of contrast that we've seen and how Black Lives Matter protesters have been treated exercising a right to free speech, by police and protesting matters of life and death, right? The murder of African Americans by police, versus what we saw yesterday, which is white supremacists and violence about sort of preferences. So like political preferences, right? Like not life or death, and ignoring the democratic transition of power that is like in our Constitution. And so I think, yes, troubling all around. Glad to hear you took a half day mental health day. And I just want to kind of own that you and I are both white individuals. And so, however much pain we feel right now really pales in comparison to the pain that our friends of color are feeling. And so I think this is a really important time for white people, yes, to like feel trouble, but also perhaps most critically to sit back and listen and sort of like pause regular content, if you will. I think the thing I'm seeing that's most distasteful is sort of like regular programming from influencers on Instagram and LinkedIn. And I think this really is a time to pause and reflect and listen.
I agree.
Colleagues and friends of color, which I know you agree about, but I really appreciate you starting the podcast on that note. And also I want to say happy early birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And like, you make a really good point there. One of the reasons I started this podcast 8, 9 months ago was during quarantine, the Black Lives Matter, and this like making sure people had a voice. And my episodes 2 and 3, my guests will know, was around Black Lives Matters. I had friends of color in my life come and talk about the disenfranchisement, the prejudice they've experienced. And some people actually declined, said, Randy, I thank you for giving me the invite, but I don't feel comfortable coming on speaking about it. Like, my voice doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for the past 20 years. Like, your podcast doesn't do anything. Nothing against you in the podcast. I just don't want to do it. And you are now making me think, like, how do they feel today seeing someone with a Confederate flag in the state capitol, a cop helping someone down the stairs, the cops taking selfies with people in the state capitol? If that was people of color, would that have gone the same way? And the answer is no. And that's got to be so tough, and that we can talk about it and feel like we get it, but us not being of color, we're not going to get it because it's never really happened to us. Like, fair enough, that probably would have been us getting helped down because we're not people of color.
Yeah, right. Really well said. And it really, watching yesterday is sort of like the epitome of white privilege, right? If you needed pictures or video footage of evidence of white privilege, you got it yesterday, right? We kind of understand that if that was a group of Muslims engaging in protest, right, or people of color, it would not have turned out the way that it did yesterday.
I agree. And I think I have a question for you around this, is like, how would you help the people you coach deal with things like that? But I want to take it back a second. We'll get to that question later in the podcast, because I want people to understand Julia, who's Julia, who she is. I know we kind of jumped right into it. So let me take a second back. And again, welcome Julia to the podcast. Julia lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's a career coach. She built her own business. As I said, she's been in multiple magazines. She's wrote her own book. So she's really someone who helps people get to the next level in their career, or helps people coach at that point in career how to deal with situations. So Julia, I'm going to give you the floor. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. You know, I said where you live, maybe some background information, where did you go to school, and kind of how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. I really appreciate that. So I am the founder of the Authenticity Guide, which is career confidence coaching for leaders and emerging leaders like yourself. And this is my third career, believe it or not. I never identified as an entrepreneur. I never identified as an aspiring entrepreneur before launching my coaching practice. And indeed, even into launching my coaching practice, I was reticent to embrace the identity of an entrepreneur. So I think that's just an important note for people. If that word isn't totally resonating for you, it doesn't mean that path isn't right for you.
But that's interesting, because a lot of people have come on here, say they've always had that entrepreneur mindset. They've always wanted to be their own boss. And you kind of, it sounds like, fell into it to a degree.
Yeah, I did fall into it. So this is my third career. I started my career in corporate finance in New York. I studied economics and gender studies. And I sort of found my activist roots in undergrad. I worked in a variety of areas. I worked in microfinance. I worked in economic empowerment for South Asian survivors of domestic violence. I worked in advocacy for low-wage workers' rights, particularly custodial workers. And I loved all of it. And I was sort of industry mission area agnostic and couldn't really figure out where I belonged, which is so common, and if not the norm, for people who are 22 coming out of college feeling like they should know what they want to do and don't, right? How would they? How would you know what you want to do if you haven't experienced it? I love talking about compiling a list of things you hate through low stakes trial and error experiences, rather than sort of chasing that elusive word passion, because passion comes with time and information. And so just allow yourself some grace with that word. also passions are formed by our experiences, right? And when we haven't been out in the world and had all that many sort of adult experiences, it's only natural that we wouldn't sort of know what that passion is. And that passion isn't singular, right? There's multiple passions, right? Like Randy, you're a great example. You have a really strong passion for managing and supporting the people on your team. And you also have a passion for the podcast project you're doing. You also have a passion for surfing. You have passions for, being with your friends. And so most people are multifaceted like that, with multiple passions that change over time. So anyway, that was my first career. I learned a lot, and it just wasn't happy. I'm sure a lot of your listeners can empathize with this feeling, right? Like when your alarm clock goes off in the morning and you're just like praying for a snow day, as if you're in school, right? You're like, is it a snow day? Like pulling up my email, right? And it's like summer. So I very much was a victim to that feeling when I was working in that industry. And like many, I chose graduate school as sort of my, what the heck is my next step moment? I just needed to collect more data. And so I decided that business school was the right choice because I could apply that degree to nonprofit and for-profit enterprises. I could zoom out. I could meet lots of different types of people. And really my attendance at business school was founded on the premise that business is a crucial vehicle for social change, and that I was sort of tired of seeing only nonprofits feel responsible for changing people on the planet. And I felt like businesses had a responsibility to do that. I know Cisco has an impressive social impact mission. That's one of the things that draws me to that company, and others like it. So my second career was in the social impact space. So I was in impact investing and social impact consulting. And that was a wonderful time in my life in many ways. And I collected data, right? This is something I have my clients do: collect data. What energizes you? What drains you? Why? Get curious with yourself, right? If you hate something, ask yourself why you hate it. What facets of it do you hate and why? And so I did that, at kind of the last moment before I quit to start my company. I was the director of a social impact consulting firm running the North Carolina branch. I had a team of 10 consultants under me. I loved them all. But I found that my love of those people was far more about coaching them than execution of project work. And you'll understand that distinction as someone who is a manager who also coaches. And that's something that I really loved about working with you, Randy, is that you understand how amazing leaders and amazing managers are also coaches, and empower people and create space to listen and be present. That's something that you and I spent a lot of time discussing. I found that was really the only part I was interested in. I didn't want to manage a team of 10 people and be held accountable to like a P&L. Like I just, I had done all of that in business school, and I had done all of that in finance, and it just wasn't what made my heart go pitter patter. And I was in a privileged position, and I always have to say this, privilege with a capital P, in many ways, in that I had chosen to marry someone who had an income that could support both of us. We live in an area that is not as expensive as, say, New York, which is where we were from. And so one income, could support us. And I had, perhaps most importantly, the emotional support of my partner to quit without a plan B. But I did quit without plan B.
So that kind of goes back to the episode a couple of weeks ago with Taylor Holt. That you guys will know. Taylor was saying, like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of an educator. I wanted to go into health coaching as well. And Alexio, her fiance, gave her the full support to say, hey, go make it happen. This is your dreams. I'm here for what you need. And you had the same thing here. So you guys are seeing a theme here that you can make your dreams happen, which is great. Go do it. But having that crutch or support system to enable your success as well is key to making sure that you feel comfortable to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that crutch looks different for different people, right? It doesn't have to take the form of a financially supportive spouse. It
Hmm.
can take the form of diligent and thoughtful planning, right? So it could be an amount of money that you put away every month for your sort of first year of business fund, understanding that, profitability is unlikely in that amount of time. Right. It could be fundraising, kind of whatever form that takes. But yes, I do not generally advocate the quitting cold turkey without an additional support system as a general rule. But yeah, and so I took a month and I basically just talked to a lot of people and I thought and I wrote. Those are all wonderful skills to employ at any pivot point in your life, right? Getting information from others, connecting with others, and engaging in introspection, sort of the outward and the inward combined. And then I just started coaching. I just started, and there's a lot of debate on whether that's the right approach. But I actually felt really confident in my coaching skills. I had coached pretty much my whole adult life, even if I wasn't getting paid for it. And my first paid, this is a kind of good lesson in there are times when fake it till you make it is perfectly acceptable. My first paying client had no idea she was my first paying client.
Ooh.
And she'll never know that it was her.
No name drops.
No name drops. But that just goes to like, when you're ready, go for it, right? Like charge. And then the distance from 0 to 1 is the toughest distance.
I like that quote.
Yeah. And from there, I just have to say, like, it's been hustle, it's been patience, and it's been aligning with what I am naturally gifted at. And the success has kind of followed. And happy to answer specific questions, but that's sort of the larger arc. And yes, now I work for myself. And I have to say, like, I always hated working for other people. And it's not because I'm of some chip on my shoulder about authority. But it just was always uncomfortable to work for other people. I can't, I mean, anyone who feels that way knows the feeling.
So how long have you been working for yourself now?
It's about to be 3 years.
And it sounds like you don't look back whatsoever. You went from your corporate job to running a consultant agency to a degree, and now you work for yourself. Let me take it back a bit, and this will get some good conversation going. How did you get the idea like, hey, I want to start my own business? And what did you do? You said you talked to people, but a lot of people might have the idea, but they don't know what do you need. Do you need to get yourself like a tax file number? Do you need to create an LLC? How did you start the idea of just getting the business off the ground to make that happen?
There is immense power in if you have an itch, surrounding yourself by other people with the same itch who are in different phases or stages of entrepreneurship. You do not have to go it alone, and you do not have to start research from scratch. Many people have been down this path before you. And so something that was a big push for me is that my partner actually opened a restaurant. And it within a year became one of the most successful restaurants in our area. And I saw the complete transformation in his day-to-day joy and sense of ownership of his work and pride in his work. And it was contagious. And so I think if you have the itch and don't know where to begin, start by surrounding yourself with people who have made the switch and are in a joyful, sort of successful place, because I think that energy is really contagious. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think committing pen to paper and writing is really critical, and begin by just asking yourself questions, right? So what are my greatest strengths? When am I happiest? How does this translate into a service provided or a product sold? Right? Those are the two choices. What might this look like? When I kind of pull the people who love me or know me best, what assets do they describe me as having? Right? So a powerful question to ask people around you is, what are my superpowers? What are my strengths? And their answers might surprise you, because quite often, and Randy and I, again, you and I discussed this, we have a tendency as humans, when things come naturally to us, we tend to discount them as ordinary, or feel like everyone must have this gift since I have it and it comes so easily to me. But actually the opposite is true. If it comes really easily to you and you're wonderful at it, that is probably your superpower, and you may be discounting it. So have caution about that. I was a victim to this for a long time, right? Like I went to work in finance because I had these ideas about what was impressive and what I should be doing and what indicated that I was smart to the people around me, right? It was like I was always trying to check these parallel boxes, right? Of like, am I impressive in terms of kind of the difficulty of the job, right? Am I checking this like quantitative, like numbers difficult box?
Did your parents push you to go into finance, or was there someone who wanted you to go that way?
They didn't. Um, I do believe in the power of nuclear families to influence our thinking. I mean, it's one of the main factors that influences kind of our definition of the word impressive. And so I won't deny being influenced by them, though it was not overt in any way. The only kind of goal that they espoused for their children was wanting us to be happy. But I think children are really great at reading between the lines, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a great kind of question for your listeners is like, what is your definition of impressive? Where does that come from? And is that definition serving you and bringing you joy?
Interesting. I think that's a lot of people are, I think a lot of people are probably thinking about that question right now, especially in quarantine, being alone or being not maybe alone, but like you're isolated. Am I enjoying? Am I happy? Am I impressed with what I'm doing right now? And I think we're probably going to see a lot of people change careers or try to do like what I'm doing. I created the second hobby side gig of doing a podcast. Now I have the YouTube channel going because, I'm not that I'm not happy with Cisco what I'm doing, but like I have a lot of free time on my hands. So I'm not a video game player and whatnot. I want to be creative and try to, as you said, coach and share knowledge with people to help other people get to the point they want to be at.
Yeah, totally. And, our well-being cannot be wrapped up in the way we make an income. Like that's a
Hmm.
recipe for disaster. Just like our well-being in its entirety can't be wrapped up in, our fitness routine. It's holistic, right? It's sort of like this idea of like we all craft our lives in many different categories. And so how are you thinking about your own holistic well-being? And I think it's so interesting because a lot of people come to me, Randy, with the hypothesis that they need to change jobs or change careers. And I think as a career coach, it's really important to be discerning about like, is that the goal? Or is there a way to craft more holistic fulfillment in other areas that aren't your job? And do you need to create more boundaries with work? And how do we do that? Right. And so, like in your case, creating a podcast was the answer. For other people, maybe it's like joining a nonprofit board because they feel like my job isn't impactful enough. I don't see the impact of my work. So maybe you're really passionate about ending homelessness and you can go be the finance chair of that board, and that sort of feeds your soul, and then your job becomes more tolerable suddenly. Right. So how are we crafting holistically lives that feed us? Is a really critical question, I think, as a career coach, right? Is like, what does the whole picture look like?
What is Authenticity Guide? How do you market it? How do you get businesses to want to buy into you, helping them and their coworkers move forward?
Yeah. So the Authenticity Guide it's the name of my LLC, and the word guide is intended to have a dual meaning. So guide is a noun, which is a living document called the Authenticity Guide that you can download on my website that reflects much of what I was just discussing about kind of holistic well-being and the categories reflected in that. And then the other definition of guide is, of course, a verb, in that I serve as a guide for others to find happiness and success and well-being. And so, I would say a lot of my business is word of mouth. I do apply to conferences and I network with businesses. Ultimately, because coaching is so personal, many coaches, if not most coaches, rely on people who have worked with us to convey what they got out of coaching to others. And so the kind of learning and development corporate route is not so dissimilar, right? So
Mm-hmm.
showing kind of positive outcomes from a workshop that you gave or from a program that you ran and asking for testimonials or asking for an introduction is probably the most powerful way that I run my business. It's on relationships. It's not, there's nothing cold about my sales process. And it frankly would be a waste of time if it were.
So networking, the big keyword there, I feel like.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so interesting because I've noticed a huge aversion to that word in my practice. For a lot of people, I think it's really cringy. And so I just like rebrand that word to connecting.
Yeah, I like that.
It's just a total rebrand.
So I never asked you this question. How did you get connected to Cisco?
Connecting. Networking. Yeah. And so often, so I feel like I use this word a lot with my clients. And you might be familiar with the word, Randy. It's chutzpah with a
Yeah, the Yiddish word.
the Yiddish word, and it essentially means audacity. And I talk about tasteful chutzpah, which is tasteful audacity, right? The idea that, don't be afraid to go for it. Don't be afraid to take small risks, to ask for what you want. And that's a huge theme in my life, right? I took a look at some of your questions for the duration of our session, and a lot of my answer is going to be tasteful chutzpah, which means I kind of just went for it and I asked for it. And the successful entrepreneurs have a different definition of failure. They have a different definition of what's a no and what deflates you, right? I notice successful entrepreneurs seeing no as a word with no reflection of value on their ego or who they are, right? It's just like, no, okay, pivot. Whereas people who don't find success as entrepreneurs or who aren't sort of attracted to that path, it's possible that a no or a non-response has a large effect on their ego, or they're using the word failure.
Interesting.
In a way that's not productive. And so to answer your question, sorry, this is really long-winded, but I mean, it was, as most things are, it was a 6 degrees of separation kind of thing, right? So I knew someone who worked at Cisco. I asked her for an introduction to anyone she knew in HR. I asked that person for an intro to anyone they knew in leadership development. I asked that person for an intro to anyone they knew in coaching. And then I found the right person and we had an amazing conversation. And I talked to her about my methodology and how I utilize a strengths-based approach and positive psychology. And that was really consistent with Cisco's approach. And before I knew it, I was in Cisco training. And I'm not sure if you know the process that coaches go through, but it's 20 hours.
I didn't know the process. Please share with the audience.
Yeah, so it's 20 hours of training and like a pretty comprehensive exam, which is 3 hours of coaching with a senior coach at Cisco, and you have to pass. So you as a coach coming in have to coach the senior coach, and they bring a real issue to session. So they're really seeing you coach real time using their standout assessment, which is, if your listeners are familiar with StrengthsFinder, it's essentially like that, just a little bit more simplified. So it's a strengths-based coaching philosophy. And so then it's pass fail. And from there, once you kind of make it in, they provide clients to you. So you don't have to do any business development. They give me people like you. So how could I feel anything less than thrilled about my life? And yeah, it's awesome. It's an awesome program. Very few companies have.
Yeah, and that's how I got connected to Julia. Was my old manager, Meg, said that she was going through coaching and she was really liking it and asked if I wanted to do it. And I never really had a coach, psychologist, things, something like that before. I was like, you know what? Why not? The only thing it can do is just help me move forward. And so I had 6 sessions with Julia over the course of 6 months. And the first session was talking about strengths and weaknesses. I took, what was the test I took, if you remember the name of it? Standout. And I was an equalizer and an educator, if I remember correctly. And the educator part talked about, you guys all have heard me talk about it. I lead a global team. So trying to get them to the next level, trying to be the best manager I can be there, and not just, hey, what are the numbers, but like, how can I help you in your life? How can I move that? The equalizer is, I'm very fair. I'm always going to be pragmatic. I'm going to think of every yes and no possibility and come to the solution that is going to resolve the situation for the best ability you can do. But so we talked about that in the first session. And then we did some wide range. We talked about my career goals. We talked about my love life. We talked about the pandemic, work situations, how I dealt with stuff. So like Julia really helped me feel comfortable in my skin. Was I making the right decisions? How could I think about situations differently in the business aspects and also personal life? Like, being isolated in quarantine, being single, not being able to see people, definitely felt a little bit lonely and like dealing with how just not being around people would deal with not seeing your friends and things like that. And she helped me feel comfortable, like in how you deal with those emotions, how you move forward, and getting vulnerable for a second. Like again, like you see people having relationships that right now, a lot of my friends are getting engaged because they've been together and they're seeing it's worth it. I'm seeing a lot of people also potentially getting broken up. It's not working out. Me, I'm just kind of here solo, like, yo, I got a podcast. What up? But maybe I'm also using this as a way to project myself to like try to connect with people because I'm feeling a bit isolated right now, which Julie and we talked about, and she helped me understand how you deal with those emotions and the mindset you can have to not think of it like that, but what are the positive you're doing with what you got going on. So I'll let Julia respond to that.
Yeah, I really appreciate your vulnerability, Randy, and I'm sure many of your listeners are nodding along as you're talking about the impact of this past year and how
Slide my DMs. No, I'm kidding.
right, she's out there. She's
Yeah.
out there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was such a pleasure to work with you to, you're someone who was already pretty evolved in terms of how you're leading other people. And, many of the things I think I said were not revelatory to you, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think the purpose of coaching isn't necessarily to deliver like life-shattering lessons, but it's pulling out the truths that are already within you to help you practice more self-compassion, celebration of your own strengths, understanding resiliency and what that looks like for you and how to bounce back from inevitable tough situations, inevitable conflict, what your role might be in
Mm-hmm.
those things, right? And so it's about questions and it's about collaboration.
So on the note of questions, let me do a quick fire round for you here. For the people that you work with, what are some of the key traits you see that make them strong leaders? And for people who you work with, what are some of the weaknesses that you see that they need to work on to become strong leaders?
Mhm. So,
And for everyone out there, I put Julie on the spot here. I did not give her this question, so if she takes a
no,
second
it's
to think
fine.
about it, don't worry about it.
I'm taking a moment to collect my
Yeah.
thoughts. So I think a couple of things on really impressive leaders to me are leaders who actually enact the lifelong learner philosophy. Leaders who always believe that there's something they can learn from other people. And I think that comes out really clearly in a coaching session. Right, is like an openness to adapt, an openness to be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
an openness to own when you're wrong. I mean, talk about sort of like a sense of security and an overall like healthy way of life, right? Being wrong doesn't mean that you're less worthy of being a leader. It means that you're human. And how great is that?
Yeah.
And so I think wonderful leaders can be wrong and talk about the ways in which they were wrong without letting it threaten their very existence. I will also say that great leaders listen and know how to listen and
Mm.
engage regularly in active listening and question asking. And the last one I will say, which is a word I've used here before, is resilience. And
Mm.
resilience is essentially mental fitness. It's the ability to bounce back from adverse events. Um, that skill was more important than ever this past year.
I agree. I think the one that I relate to the most is listening and just being there for the team. Because sometimes when you're managing people in your one-on-ones, they don't want to talk about numbers. Like, and my job is to get to forecast numbers. But if they're having a bad day, if there's something going on, and they need to vent, I need to be that ears for them and just let them vent because I know that letting them vent will help them feel better and be more productive the coming day, weeks, whatnot. And also, they know that I'm just not there. I don't see them as a person in the role. I don't see them as a number that we need to hit. They're a human being and they're my friends. And they're like my family. I talk to them more than probably people in my normal life because you're on the phone with people every day at work. And so like for the holidays, I sent everybody on my team and my extended team I work with closely Amazon gift card out of my own pocket, nothing like commission or anything comp type of thing. I put a note like, please don't send me anything back. This is just my token of my appreciation for all the hard work that you do that I know about and all the hard work I know that I don't know that you do day to day. I just wanted to say thank you and give you a note. And I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. But also when I was at home during the holidays, my dad told me this, he goes, dude, you're 27 and you're doing that as a manager. I have had managers the past 3 years of my life who would never even think about doing such a thing. Like you need to realize that you're so far light years ahead and how you try to lead the people, it's only going to benefit you as you move forward. I wasn't looking at it like how as a manager, like how I can get myself up, but like I look at it as like I'm a friend. And I think that's what makes me a good manager is I see people as humans, and a lot of people who are managers, especially maybe older managers who had a different mindset growing up, don't see people like that. I'm sure Julia, you deal with people like that every day.
Mm, mm. Randy for president, am I right?
2028.
Yeah, I mean, this is what makes you such a pleasure to work with as a coach, right? We hope to work with people who don't see the people they manage as resources that are to extract things from, but rather human beings that we have relationships with, and often complex relationships. And your instincts about listening are spot on. Your instincts about giving are spot on. And I had very little to teach you. It was really just about like providing space. And oftentimes that is what coaching is. It's providing a space that's just yours. That's just for you.
Leap of Faith fans, excuse me for interrupting the podcast, but boy, do I have an exciting announcement for you. The YouTube channel for The Leap of Faith is now live. I'm so excited to share this with you. There will be videos coming out every week, 2-3 times a week. Every Tuesday will be Tough Tuesday, where I will share a workout video. It will be with weights, some videos will be without weights, full workout routines, different types of workouts for you to hit your New Year's resolution and get fit. We'll have nutrition videos. We'll have mindfulness videos every Friday to help you with stress relief and relaxation. We will have vlog videos every month around how to start a podcast, trips taken, how to get into sales, and everything around this podcast. You asked for it, I deliver. Please go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do it by going any of the social media channels at Leap of Faith Pod. Type in Leap of Faith on YouTube. Look at all the links. Go ahead and check it out. I already have 100 videos posted. I've been creating so much content for you, and I just posted it all live for you now. Go check it out. Leap of Faith on YouTube is now live. Please go subscribe. Now back to the podcast. Enjoy.
So if you didn't have to teach me a lot, which again, thank you humbly. I don't think that's true. You taught me so much. What do most people who come to you, what are some of the things that are the issues that they're dealing with in the day to day? And you're like, okay, let's problem solve this, talk through it. If you can not obviously name names, personal information, that's kind of the concepts.
Yeah, I'll maybe just like role play for a second and assume the voice of my clients.
Okay.
And I'll say like a couple of sentences that emerge as themes. I feel stuck. I lack motivation to achieve my goals. I don't know what my goals are. I don't know what I'm passionate about. I need a change, but I have no idea where to start. I think I want to do X, but I'm so far from it. I feel miserable and I don't know how to become not miserable. I'm feeling sort of stuck and I need some accountability and guidance to help get me unstuck.
So then as a coach, I mean, that's a lot to unpack there. A lot of probably stuff beyond work that they're dealing with. Where do you start? How do you kind of decompress that? Let's start at the building block A, and we're going to have 6 sessions together. How do you get them from session 1 to session 6 to get them to the point that hopefully the coaching will get them to?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Randy, because I have a different process with my Cisco clients and corporate clients than I do with my individual clients who come to me through my practice, right? So I only have so much freedom with Cisco, and I really like the strengths-based approach. I really like the standout assessment, and I'm not able to use my own personal tools in Cisco. So if you were to work with me one-on-one as an individual client, the experience might be a bit different. But let me just talk you through broadly. Initially, I think most coaches will agree that a pre-coaching assessment of some kind is really necessary. It helps get the client in the headspace of introspection, and it helps give the coach a heads up about the major issues that you're dealing with. Oftentimes you'll find a client come into a first session and say, so I have a questionnaire, a pretty robust questionnaire that I ask folks to fill out to come to our first session prepared with. And it's, the questions range from like, what are 3 professional experiences or personal experiences or projects that you've done that have fueled you or energized you and made you really excited, and describe them? To like, who are a couple of people out there in the world who inspire you, and why do they inspire you? And so the questionnaire really ranges. But through that process, the client as well as the coach can start to pull out some themes. And so oftentimes as a coach, you'll have some hunches early on about what the path is going to be. But of course, it's not for you to decide, it's for the client to decide. And so you start by sort of getting to know each other through those questionnaires and assessments, right? Standout is another assessment. I also, which is something I'm sad that you didn't get to experience, Randy, but we can chat offline if it's of interest. I put my coaching clients through a program called Positive Intelligence, which is an app. And it's a 6-week program that's all about mental fitness and resilience, getting to know your saboteurs, right? Who are those characters in your brain that are sabotaging you? Who are they? What are their names? Mine are people pleaser and hyperachiever. And who are the sage parts of you, and how to move from saboteur to sage and engage with your body, and basically in mini mindfulness and meditation to move from saboteur to sage. And that goes to resilience as well. So I use a number of tools with my clients, and providing space and active listening. I mean, as a manager who employs this, that like that's the tool for creating psychological safety, right? And like vulnerability and normalizing mistakes, pointing out, I think, when a client is using self-punishing language, right? That comes so naturally to us. And I think particularly as Americans, right, it's so normalized to like be self-effacing, or like use the fail word on ourselves. And so simply pointing out when we could use more compassion with ourselves, and lead more with forgiveness and self-love is a big part of it too. And ultimately, so there's some parts that are curriculum-y in terms of kind of paths and phases that you move through. And then much of it is informed by the direction that the client is ready to go in or wants to go in.
Got it. But of course, the curriculum part, you had to kind of make a structure that is repeatable for each person. So, hey, if they go down option A, this is how the conversation goes, and it becomes more freeform. Option B then becomes more freeform.
That's right. And I have different types of programs. So I have like leadership coaching, career coaching. I would bucket those as the same. I also have a program called Couch to Coach in 9 weeks. And this was really organic. I didn't intend to coach new coaches at all, but I had a couple of people who were aspiring coaches in various areas, health coaching, life coaching, and other areas of coaching, come to me and say, like, I don't know if I want to go through a coaching program. They're very expensive. And I also want to learn the business side of coaching, not just how to ask thoughtful, open-ended questions. And so my program is sort of born from that lack in the market. It's a concurrent kind of teaching you how to be a coach, but also teaching you the business of starting a coaching business. And so I provide a lot of tools that it took me probably about 18 months to build, and I give it in 9 weeks.
Wow, that's impressive. I'm sure you have a lot of your clients come back to you and say, Julia, thank you so much. Like everything you've provided me, I'm successful, I'm doing great. And it must be so humbling to you to now have a coaching tree, pun intended, happening.
It's really fun. And like that one, it is very gratifying to be able to show aspiring coaches how to launch a financially sustainable coaching practice and also be good coaches. And I am providing a lot of value in that program. Like, it's stuff that I've spent a lot of time and money developing that I just give away. So I feel really great about being able to save other people time and money that I spent.
That's awesome. And we'll just side note here really quickly. If people want to find you, how can we find you?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's www.juliawuench, which is just my name, JuliaWuench.com. That will take you to my website. You will get all you need about how to get in touch with me there.
Great. And as we round third, this is probably the most exciting part people want to listen to. You've been in Forbes, you've been in Business Insider. Those are big magazines, big newspapers. A lot of people aspire to be in there, and you are a contributor there. How did you make that happen? Was it the connection word again, networking? How often do you get to do that? What was the feeling of seeing your name inside of Forbes?
From starting my business was to be a contributor to Forbes. And I started, we live in this wonderful age where anyone can be a thought leader, right? Like, Randy, you're a thought leader right now with your podcast. We can all be thought leaders. And so I encourage you to think about how you can be a thought leader. And so that's what I did. And I was one of the first people to coin Zoom fatigue as a phrase. Through my LinkedIn blog. And I literally did, it's so cheesy now, but it worked, right? So it was #Thoughtful Thursdays. And every Thursday I would be like, oh, it's Thursday, I gotta do a Thoughtful Thursday post. And I would just like write on my LinkedIn blog. And I wrote and got some energy, got a lot of reshares. The content I was posting was resonating with people. And then again, like, back to chutzpah, right? And connecting, chutzpah and connecting, and one foot in front of the other. There was a young woman who was an editor at Business Insider who I went to undergrad with. We had a psych class together and an English class together, and I remembered her quite fondly. And I said, hey, I don't know if you remember me from like English, but I remember you so fondly, and you were just like this gem, and you were always so kind. And, this is a goal that I have, and I've been writing these blog posts, and would you be able to introduce me to someone at Business Insider who would let me write for you guys? And we had an amazing conversation. She remembered me very fondly, much in the same way I remembered her. And she introduced me to the editors. And I wrote for free for Business Insider for no pay for a little bit. It was amazing to see my first Business Insider article come out. It was such a moment of celebration for me. And then that moment, right? So again, we're talking about building blocks, right? One foot in front of the other. I wanted to be paid to write. It wasn't enough for me to just be a contributor. And so that was the stepping stone. I was part of a community and author support group for the book I'm writing. And the accountability buddy that I was paired up with, would you know it, was a paid contributor to Forbes. And she and I became fast friends. And the timing was right. And I said, would you be willing to intro me to your editors? I write for Business Insider already. So freaking lootly. And then the magic happened, and now I get paid to write for Forbes.
That's fantastic. And you really had that mind over matter. And as you literally preached, baby steps. You did one thing on LinkedIn as a blog, blew up.
Thursdays.
Thoughtful Thursdays, which is also today's Thursday. So should we expect something to come out today? Thoughtful Thursday. And it turned into you using everything you've learned up to your point in your career and life to get you where you're at today. And meeting somebody in college X amount of years down the road came back to help you out. And I've talked about this so many times, is you never know when someone in your network, especially now with social media, staying everyone connected 24/7, how it's going to come back to help you out down the line. So don't be an asshole.
Yeah, be kind, notice people, and stay in touch.
I'm going to grab my charger. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, of course. I like your man bun. You're going to see this when you come back, so I'll just repeat it. I like your man bun.
Thank you. I haven't cut my hair in a year and a half.
Good for you.
Going for 2 years. So I'm three-fourths of the way there. It's pretty impressive. Basically started out as a bet, and then quarantine happened. And I was like, cool. It gave me basically a full year of no one looking at me, and I just let it go and go. So I can put my hair down for you. If you guys are listening to this on Spotify or Apple, please go to my YouTube channel so you can see my hair.
You need to get over to YouTube because this is epic right now.
It's so long.
Gorgeous.
I love it.
What shampoo do you use? It's gorgeous.
It's called natural. I don't shower. I don't shampoo. I don't do anything. uh, a great talk. We're going from Forbes talking about using shampoo. What a podcast. As we get to the last 5 minutes here, end of it, any advice for people who want to become a coach, start their own business, anything like that maybe we haven't touched on today?
Don't go it alone. You don't have to go it alone. Find your communities. There's so many incredible virtual communities of entrepreneurs, of coaches. Find like-minded people and meet them and like network with them and connect with them and support them, because you don't have to start from scratch alone. I know I certainly didn't. And I think that goes for anywhere that you are in your life and career. I know it's cringy for a lot of people to think about joining communities or putting themselves out there, but relationships, the reciprocity, the exchange, the two-way exchange of value is what is going to skyrocket your career, whether that's corporate, nonprofit, or entrepreneurship. Connections to other human beings are what lead to success. And that's proved true time and time again, not just for me, but for everyone that I coach and frankly, everyone that I know. You can't do it alone. You can't do it in a silo. And so how are you going to challenge yourself to get accountability, to get help, and to get inspiration from others?
Are there any specific books, magazines, groups that you would recommend joining, including that might be your own?
So my book is gonna hopefully come out by the end of this year, so we can touch base about that.
Fingers crossed.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of all things Brene Brown. I'm a huge fan of all things Adam Grant. Incredible thought leaders in the spaces of kind of like being a human at work and vulnerability and relationships. I am a big believer in this book, Coactive Coaching, that you see back here, not just for coaches, but for anyone who manages people, because of the power of questions to bring out the best in other people. I mean, I would just start there. I mean, my list can go on forever about recommendations, but also if you download the Authenticity Guide from my website, there's a list of content recommendations on the last page. So check that out.
Awesome. And of course, on YouTube or Apple, Spotify, we're listening to in the bio, go ahead and check it. We'll link her website. We'll link her guide. Julia, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you.
It's been an honor. I think you educated the guests. My big 3 key themes from you are: 1, we just talked about relationship building. You never know how anything you've done in the past is going to affect anything in the future, especially with networking, connections, things like that. So be a good person. Don't be an a-hole. Don't go bring the Confederate flag to the state capitol. You know, it's not going to get you far in life or get you moving in life. You'll go to jail. Number 2 is have belief in yourself. You know, Julia started, this is her 3rd company, started in finance, and then she went to consulting. Now she has her own company, and she took baby steps to get there, taught herself. So everyone wants this immediate gratification. You see someone with 500,000 followers on Instagram, they get a bunch of likes. You see people, but everyone started somewhere. Most people were not born into the Kanye West Kardashian family. It's going to be instantly born in people caring about us, knowing us. Baby steps. You got to slowly build yourself up. Me with my YouTube channel, you know, I'm at 40 followers, and people are like, oh, like, is it worth it? I'm gonna get there. I have a goal for 100 by the end of January, goal for 600 by the end of the half year, goal for 1,000 by the end of 2021, and slowly build yourself up. And then
I love it so much, Randy. Yes, perfect is the enemy of progress, right?
Yes, I completely agree. Perfect is enemy of progress. And then 3, I think the last one is always be learning. She's always reading, educating, teaching herself, teaching others. Making sure her people that she coaches are learning from their mistakes, they're learning how they can be better people. And that's not just something in coaching, that's in life. Whatever your passion is, whatever your career is, whatever you're driven to do, just learn a new recipe once a week. If it's learn how to create a podcast, Side note, that's coming out pretty soon. Learning whatever you want. There's always be learning to educate and grow yourself, especially as we're still in isolation. Hopefully we're coming to the end of the pandemic very soon. Learn yourself. Don't let yourself go stir crazy sitting here like I am. But if you are, go ahead and learn whatever you want to learn.
Thank you, Randy. I'm honored to be here. That's kind of the personal note. And as your coach, I am so proud of you.
Thank you so much. So this is the Leap of Faith podcast. My name is Randy Silver. This is Julia. Go please check out the Authenticity Guide. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, please rate, review. That's how we get more followers. If you're on YouTube, please go ahead and subscribe, hit the notification. We'll get these videos and videos coming out every week. Again, I have Tough Tuesday, the workout videos. We have the Thirst Trap Thursdays for the conditioning videos. We have the Meditation Monday videos. And of course, we have these podcast videos coming out weekly. Other videos coming out, how to start a podcast, the trip I had to Mexico, how to cross the border, things like that. So a lot of good stuff coming out for you. 2021 is the year of reckoning for the Leap of Faith. And Julia is our first guest of the year, and she started it on an unbelievable level. Thank you so much, Julia. Any last words?
Nope. Just thank you to all your listeners, and I wish everyone a better 2021.
Awesome. So now we're going to do the sign off. Please repeat after me. Leap of Faith fans.
Leap of Faith fans.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Stay wealthy.
Stay wealthy.
Have a good week, fans. Sorry, keep going.
Have a good week, fans.
Deuces.
Deuces.
Have a good week, y'all. Bye.
Have a good week, y'all. Bye.